All right, good evening, and welcome to Further Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm Colia Clark, standing in for Paula Gloria. And this evening promises to be, believe me, a very informative and red-hot evening. So don't you dare turn that button on the tube. On my left, I'm going to allow my guest, Joe Friendly, to talk a bit about himself. And welcome, Joe, to the show for this evening.
Thanks, Coley. I am a producer of a show called Truth for a Change, which as of next Monday will be 10 o'clock Monday through Friday. We try to show the public what the commercial networks don't provide. And that is a lot of important information we need to evaluate the horrible directions our government tends to go.
All right, well, welcome again, Joe. And on my left again is this beautiful sister who will tell you about herself and her show.
Hi, my name is Diana Montford. I do a public affairs show Sunday evenings, 8:30, Channel 56. I'm transgendered, I'm a transgender activist, and I'm involved in local democratic politics.
Well, you see, we have two powerful guests, and we will have a powerful discussion. We may talk a little bit about medical marijuana. We'll certainly talk with our guests about their own programs. So let's kind of settle in. Someone's on the line, so let's hear from this person on the line. We want to hear from everybody in the city tonight.
He's from Nova Scotia.
Christian, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm right here.
Okay, you want to introduce yourself to Colia Clark? Were you able to hear everybody?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Coley. My name is Christian Laurette. I am from Amsterdam, Nova Scotia, Canada. I am the producer and director of Run From the Cure.
I want the audience to pay very careful attention to this because we're going further down in this rabbit hole, and we are looking at an actual bust in Canada, a marijuana bust. Bust on folk who are in need of medical marijuana in order to survive. So please, please take a close look at this.
From the Global Maritime Studios.
RCMP won't confirm that they raided Simpson's property last week.
Hello, my name is Mike Simpson, Rick Simpson's oldest son. On November 25th, 2009, approximately 10:30, I showed up to check on my father's property to find 3 unmarked police vehicles at the end of my father's driveway, an RCMP 4-wheel drive in the middle of my father's driveway. I pulled in the end of the driveway and walked towards the house. I got about halfway towards the house when I was surrounded by 9 police officers with their hands on their guns. I then asked them what the hell they were doing there. They said they were there to serve a warrant for cultivation of cannabis. I then told them they were standing on a 1,500-acre land grant, that my father's property is a country within a country, and that they had no right to be on that property. They then said that a judge had signed the warrant and they could do as they pleased. I told them I was the caretaker of the property and I wanted to see the warrant. They would not show it to me. I then asked each and every one of them for their business cards. They would not give me their business cards, which by their law they are required to do so. They then ran me off my family's land, and I was forced to watch them ransack my father's house from the end of his driveway. I watched them carry things out of his house that they had left from other raids on his property. After they were done ransacking my family's property, as they backed a trailer load of plastic junk and a fluorescent light shade out of the driveway, Officer Timmy Hunter came over to me, and I told him, in the past they had taken 2,800 marijuana plants off my father's property. He ended up with a $2,000 fine. I then asked Timmy Hunter what they thought they were going to accomplish with a trailer load of junk plastic that they had left the last time they had raided. He just stood there with a dumb look on his face, then asked me how I liked my Volkswagen car. As soon as they had left the property, I went into my dad's house to see how much damage was done. I was sickened by the damage. Before my father left for his trip, I installed a video surveillance system, which was clearly posted on every door and every window of the house. The police stole 3 cameras that were in plain sight for everyone to see. They did not have a warrant for surveillance gear that was legally posted, but they stole it anyway, in an attempt to cover their tracks, in my opinion. They tore the house apart looking for the recorder, but failed, because it wasn't in the house. The things they took didn't make any sense to me. They took a bag of noodles that my father had brought back from his last trip to Europe. They were hemp noodles, with a hemp leaf on the package. So right now, those noodles are in Alberta, being tested for THC. It's only going to cost the taxpayers $20,000 for the RCMP to find out they took a bag of noodles. The fact that they worked so hard to try to find anything to charge my dad with tells me the raid was nothing but a witch hunt, and that they would stop at no lengths to try and find something to charge my father with. It's been 2 weeks since the raid on my father's property, and still not one of the 5 stations involved will own up to what they did. So I had no choice but to upload some footage to prove that they were there. Let's see them try and say they weren't there now. People are told we live in a free country. When it's a crime to cure cancer, just what kind of country are we living in?
Whoa, that's a good question.
Marijuana fights cancer. And what Rick Simpson has done that is so important is that he's shown us that to get the full medicinal impact of this plant, you cannot smoke it. You must eat a lot of cannabinoids. And the easiest way to do that is to make oil and eat the oil. If you are seriously ill, you need to eat about 1 gram a day for 60 days. But when you're done, 70% of the cancer patients are cancer-free. Rick started giving away oil for free, growing it in his backyard. Hundreds of patients he treated for free. So the Canadian government arrested Rick Simpson, convicted him of being a drug dealer, and while he's at the Cannabis Cup now, just now, they have raided his property for the 3rd time and are prepared to arrest Rick again when he returns to Canada. It is unconscionable to treat a saint in this manner. Rick Simpson is the Freedom Fighter of the Year. Rick.
Well, that's a very hot issue we got going there, and we see the cases. Do I still have you on the line, young man?
I'm still here. I'm here, Colia.
Because I wanted him to talk a little bit about this bust and a little bit about the police in Canada. There's obviously in the clip we hear this mention of the law that the police didn't have a warrant. 1, 2, they refused to even give him identification of who they were. They could have just been some people off the street for practical purposes. So we do need to deal with the civil rights violations as we deal with what seems to me to be a human rights violation as well in terms of the individuals who need the medical marijuana in order to survive. So I'll let us talk a little bit about it while we wait on Christian. Talk with us a little bit, one, about the police force. I was kind of interested in this kind of arrogant power where they come in, refuses to show a warrant, where they refuse to identify themselves in any way, and the breaking up of the house, and the fact that they'd been here before. Talk with us a little bit more about the history of this, so that our audience in the U.S., right here in New York City, will be very clear about what we're looking at.
In that clip that was removed from YouTube was local officers from Amherst, Nova Scotia, which is about 15 minutes from where Rick Simpson lives. There were also Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers from several different detachments in the video. Apparently they showed up at Rick's house. They refused to show his son the warrant. They refused to give business cards or even supply their names. It's my understanding now, after the fact, that some of those officers may have actually been undercover narcotics agents. And there's actually been a newspaper report from Halifax, Nova Scotia, which unfortunately they headlined "Police Raid Pot Advocate's Home" rather than focusing on the cure for cancer. But anyway, what they have said here in the newspaper is they were just recently made aware of the YouTube footage, and it's under review. They say that the tape is being reviewed to ensure that the safety of the officers has not been put in jeopardy because they have been identified. My question would be, if they were just doing their jobs and not doing anything dishonest, what would they have to worry about?
Yes, Rick, I'm also concerned that we talk a little bit about the police issues, because that seems to be a growing issue in the USA as well now, I see, is in Canada, and its impact of this kind of strong-armed police enforcement against local citizens. And in the case of Canada, the laws seem to be very similar. to laws in the U.S. where officers should identify themselves and should produce a warrant before entering the property. And you're talking about 1,500 acres, of which most of it is in marijuana plants?
It certainly has been. It wasn't when they raided the property. In fact, there were no plants on the property when they just raided this time.
So there was no really, they came in looking for evidence, but if it's 1,500 marijuana plants, couldn't they see that from just entering the property?
They would have been able to. This raid actually took place on November 25th of this year, 2009, and in Canada here, in Nova Scotia, we actually have such cold weather right now, you can't grow marijuana outside. I know Rick wasn't growing it inside. The police claim that they came away with about 70 pounds of marijuana, but I'm not sure how they would have done that where there was nothing in the house.
All right, so they're claiming that they came to a place where obviously they could see in terms of actual natural growth. Outside, there were no marijuana plants.
That's
the time
correct.
of year
There was no evidence. There was no evidence visible from the house that there was anything to be suspicious of at all.
All right.
In fact, when they went into the house, it's my understanding that what they took away were hemp noodles that Rick had brought back from Europe. They also took some materials that he had been using to produce hemp oil in the past, which was there during raids that had happened before. They decided to take it this time and charge him.
So if I was driving by 1,500 acres of pot, talk with me, Joe. You're driving by 1,500 acres of pot, and you don't see no pot. Why would you go in the house?
Apparently, they heard about his award in Amsterdam.
What actually happened was Stephen Hagar from High Times magazine printed an article called "Cannabis Cures Cancer," outlining Rick's activities over the past few years, basically right from the start of his discovery. And after that was published in the January 2010 issue of High Times, that is what people believe that sparked this raid.
So you think that some publicity that was seen as positive publicity, am I correct?
Yes.
And
very,
so the
very
positive publicity to getting out the message that there was a human being on Earth who was working to develop the resource needed for cancer patients. Forced the police of Canada to engage in obviously illegal strong arm tactics at a distance anyway. So I'm going to say alleged illegal strong arm tactics. I guess that's what we're supposed to say in journalism. You want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure.
Let's talk a bit, because this is a very important piece here.
All right. Well, I think that I'm surprised that anyone is surprised by the galloping fascism of any and every police force today. I mean, we do indeed live not only in a police state, but in a police world. And it's growing ever more constricted by the moment. The freedoms that we took for granted in the 60s and 70s are gone and are considered to be radical today, even though they were considered to be quite usual and constitutional just 40 years ago. We have to stand up and say no, and if we all band together and say no, I will not stand for this, I will not allow you to abridge my freedoms, the powers that be will get the message. All it takes is enough people to say no, just no. You cannot screw with my rights.
So what I hear you saying is that Rick would be served and Canada would be served, and certainly those who are in the business of trying to develop in the interest of the world's citizens would be best served by a global movement, a global coming together of the people of the world to say we are tired of police and police states.
Well, how was the U.S. founded? I know we're discussing Canada, but how was the U.S. founded? Colonists said to the English crown, no, we won't stand for this. No, this is unfair. No, you will not abridge our rights. And that's why we're sitting here today in New York in the sovereign nation of the United States. But somewhere along the line, people forgot that, and now this society is an exceedingly repressive and plutocratic society by and for the rich, with everyone else being basically a slave.
Well, is that not similar to the starting point? We'll talk about that on another another time. Yes.
I want to hear from Christian, but I do want to throw in, just as a segue to what you were saying, that James Madison said if it wasn't for his smoking hemp, he wouldn't have gotten so enthusiastic about the whole idea of democracy. And Thomas Jefferson, in his autobiography, said that among his fondest moments were sitting on his veranda, smoking hemp and seeing as far as the eye can see. And George Washington also smoked hemp. So it is a tragedy that we're living through, that at this particular time, for political reasons, our legislature has decided to make hemp a bad thing to be involved with.
Well, but I don't think it has. I think as time passes, such as the quote unquote medical marijuana movement, I mean, there's a certain nudge, nudge, wink, wink about medical marijuana, because in California, nobody goes to a pusher anymore. They just get medical marijuana. So, I mean, you know, I think we're actually growing freer when it comes to pot. I just think that police activity is growing more repressive. And sometimes one hand doesn't know what the other is doing. Like the legislators are saying, chill, man, so it's pot, no big deal. Whereas the cops are saying, get everyone for everything. So I think...
Could you ask Christian, can you hear me from the control room, or can someone repeat it? I heard that in Canada, people in the narcotics department was sending people who had cancer to Rick.
Yes, actually that is correct. That's what I've heard.
Well, let me repeat that.
Sure.
People in the narcotics department in Canada allegedly were sending cancer patients to Rick who they raided? Is that true?
Well, yes, that is what Rick has definitely reported. RCMP have actually come to his house themselves out of uniform asking for hemp oil for their families. And this is after they raided them back in 2005, 2006. They couldn't look him in the eye. He didn't really want to say no to them, so he definitely gave them oil. But he told them, you know, you should be ashamed of yourself for what you did. You're basically making sure that the people that are dying, that are counting on me, are not going to get help. And then they come asking for help themselves.
Yeah, select for themselves and their families.
Could you, Christian, could you talk about how those other two arrests and trials played out?
Oh, definitely, yes. I was actually subpoenaed to be a witness in the Rick Simpson trial in 2007. It happened in September at the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia in Amherst, Nova Scotia. Basically, Rick was charged with possession, trafficking, and I believe cultivation of marijuana, which can, I believe, up to 12 to 14 years in jail is what you could receive for those charges if they were to give the maximum penalty. Now, what happened was Rick decided to, I don't know what you want to call it, he was representing himself in the court. He had a member of the Phoenix Tears team with him. That man was allowed to speak. Basically, the people that you see in the movie that I created, Run from the Cure, the patients that spoke about curing themselves, they were all at the courtroom. They were witnesses waiting to testify. I was one of them. We waited, I think, a whole day while the trial was going on. We weren't privy to what was going on in the courtroom, but eventually we were told that we weren't going to be able to testify. There were 10 doctors, there were 6 doctors and 10 patients. Nobody was allowed to testify. So, in the end, the jury found Rick Simpson guilty, which was a big surprise to everybody, actually. The jury was sequestered away, I guess, or they were in their jury room trying to come to a decision. Somebody from the local prosecution team here in Amherst actually was seen leaving the jury room while they were deliberating.
Wow.
That was brought up after the fact in the same courtroom, same judge. They basically took the witness that saw the prosecutor coming out of the jury room. They threatened that person with jail time, and they basically brushed it under the rug and pretended it never happened.
Well, that's certainly very, very, very interesting. The whole issue, I think, is interesting phenomenon because we look at issues like, I smoked for years. I never smoked pot, but I smoked for years cigarettes. And I'm told it gave me cancer and all kind of other issues. I lost two brothers and a father to lung cancer. And nobody has been arrested yet. Nobody's been arrested for smoking it, and nobody's been arrested for selling it. What's up?
I don't know, but I still smoke, and I've been smoking since I was 12 years old. And yes, my father died of lung cancer.
Yeah.
But people, look, the state always needs to have its hand on everything. You know, that's the way they operate.
You think it's the state, Joe? That's Rick, what you think about this? That I can smoke something as dangerous as a cigarette. Christian. I'm sorry, Christian. I'm calling Christian Rick. Christian, my apologies. We're down in this rabbit hole, and I tell you, I'm scurrying. What's up with this world where we know that one thing is extremely dangerous, and that it causes thousands of lives, and it destroys families, something like lung cancer that we get from just smoking plain old nicotine. We're looking at more and more young people smoking nicotine, and yet we don't arrest folk for that. Well, we say we'll arrest them if they sell it to somebody underage, but you know, the underage know how to get it anyway, and we don't seem to arrest anybody because we don't seem to know how the young folk know how to get it anyway. But what is up with this? Talk about what are the such negative effects associated with something as old as hemp in the world. We could go back into ancient societies, whether we were at Kemet, or Nubia, or other parts of the world, or right here in the USA where it was popular on arrival, you know, let's smoke the peace pipe, bro. What's up with marijuana that we are having such a police state around hemp?
Well, I think that the marijuana issue is mostly to do with money. The people that are trying to prevent marijuana from being used or cultivated are benefiting from it not being used and cultivated.
So you think the black market, which also may be the public market in terms of our leadership in all of these nations of the world, in many nations of the world, I shouldn't say all, that black market tax that we used to have on alcohol and other.
Well, like, for example, would it hurt beer sales if marijuana were legal?
Do I think it would hurt beer sales? Not in Canada.
And beer and marijuana went together in Kemet and in ancient lands.
In my
beer was always there.
I mean, you talk about cigarettes being dangerous. You talk about cigarettes being dangerous. You hear in the news about people who are abusing alcohol, who are dying from alcohol poisoning.
Sure.
Perhaps they are involved in some kind of a domestic violence relation to alcohol.
Thousands die every year in the United States. I don't know about Canada, and accidents related to alcohol.
Absolutely.
Including the very young.
Absolutely. In fact, they're becoming very strict about people who are getting behind the wheel with any alcohol level. We have a very zero tolerance to alcohol when people are driving here in Canada. But when it comes to cigarettes, when it comes to buying all the cigarettes you want, you can smoke yourself and drink yourself silly.
Yeah, the next question, then I'm going to let Paula speak, is we know that I can't think of but a few things that one can use nicotine for. If you get stung by a wasp in Mississippi, you want to use some tobacco and put it on your hand, it'll pull the sting out. And I'm sure there are a couple of other things that we can think of. But I don't know that any nicotine, you think it would cure cancer?
No, it's good in the garden for killing insects.
It is, yeah.
It'll give you cancer. It would do what?
Oh, nicotine will probably, you know, look, something's going to kill you someday. You may as well have a nice time. Smoke pot, smoke cigarettes, drink, be happy.
Yeah, but the issue is we make arguments around marijuana. So now we have to say medical marijuana because marijuana supposedly, I guess, destroys brain cells. Is that the argument?
I think that is the argument, but we should face the fact that they're lying. Yeah,
that the great possibility is that they're lying because we know that there's been much testimony that it has a great impact on cancer patients in terms of relieving pain and giving them
well, we've got Christian on the line. Christian, I think that that rumor about marijuana destroying brain cells was actually the studies done in the 70s showing that the THC attacked specifically the cancerous cells in the brain. Are you familiar with that, Christian?
Are you talking about the study that was done at the University of Virginia?
I'm not sure where it was done, but I remember Rick in your movie Run from the Cure was talking about hearing in 1972 maybe that there were some studies showing that THC was specifically attacking cancer. And then, I just want to say one more thing along those lines because Colia is the most excellent person to have as a host for this type of thing. Somebody told me that if this is true, that it does the kinds of things it does for cancer, why is something like the High Times, which is sort of a recreational journal, covering this when really serious medical institutions and researchers should be covering it? And are you concerned about the stigma that High Times has on something as promising as the cure for cancer? Colia, you get my gist.
Yeah, I'm getting the gist. She's looking at the High Times, which is now engaged in publicizing publicizing issues around the marijuana issue, getting this name out there on that. On the other hand, medical journals are not getting out, the medical reviews are not getting us out information about what's happening with the issue of marijuana. Can you reflect on the High Times article and kind of talk about what this means in terms of possibly a negative impact on what's happening with the issue of major cancer treatment?
It is possible that there could be a negative connotation with taking into account that High Times is one of those magazines that is emphasizing the high rather than the cure. But to be completely honest, the High Times wasn't the first magazine to have brought this to the world's attention. It was actually Weed World out of Britain who was the first magazine to publish Rick Simpson's information. And they actually published a second edition, a special limited edition. After that, High Times just recently did these articles. Now, as far as telling the mainstream media, they didn't want to hear it. Rick has gone to the United Nations with this information. Rick has contacted the Canadian Cancer Society. Rick has contacted the American Cancer Society. They're not interested in the cure. In fact, what they wrote to Rick, the Canadian Cancer Society said they're not interested in natural cures, and they wished him luck in his work.
Wow.
On the topic of High Times being a negative, putting a negative spin, the article was done by somebody who actually came from California, I believe, to do the interview with Rick, meet some patients, and I think the article did justice to what Rick was doing, considering that basically all we had before that was a few YouTube videos, which people have been absolutely amazing at reposting, making sure that people get the message out, including Paula Gloria. Much thanks for that.
Well, Paula Gloria gets out powerful messages further down the rabbit hole all the time. She's always down here skirting in this rabbit hole, trying to get the attention of the world, and that is true for my two guests that we have here tonight. They both also really engage vigorously in getting at the bottom of issues and presenting it to the public in a way in which it's useful, and in a way in which the public in the U.S. and certainly the world, when it gets a hold to it, can organize around these issues. Joe has something to say.
Christian, could you give the viewers the argument of Rick's success in curing cancer in terms of just the approximate kind of numbers, how many wins and how many losses, that kind of thing?
Well, what I can tell you for sure is that Rick is now basically saying that about 70% of people who take the hemp oil the way it's directed, of course it has to be made properly to start with. A lot of people use the leaves to make their smokable hemp oil. A lot of people call that hash oil, actually, or some kind of marijuana extract. Basically, if people are making it properly and taking it properly, and this goes against the chemotherapy and the radiation, because we've seen a lot of people actually cured of their cancer only to die later of complications that the chemotherapy had, and the radiation poisoned their bodies, basically, beyond healing. Now, the people that I met that cured their cancer, they appeared in the video Run from the Cure. They were the people that were willing to talk. We had a lot of people actually who were nervous, understandably, with the law chasing people down. But Rick is saying that there's a 70% chance that if you take hemp oil, if you have a cancer, that it's going to be gone.
Christian, may I ask you a question?
Certainly.
Now, you say that medical marijuana has a remarkable cure rate for cancer. Is it possible, here I go injecting a cynical note, is it possible that because the medical industry makes so very much money from the cash cow of cancer treatment and treating it as a chronic condition as opposed to curing it, is it possible that that's one reason why they don't want medical marijuana used in the context of orthodox medicine? Because if it cures cancer, then so very many people are out of business.
I believe that, actually. I had taken a clip from a CBC program, a Canadian television broadcasting system. It was called Chasing the Cancer Answer. Basically, the lady Wendy Mesley, who was interviewing some people at a pharmaceutical convention in Paris, she asked them how much money are they making on cancer? How's the cancer business going? And what the people at the convention said was business is absolutely great. They are making just an absolute killing off of people. In order to make marijuana a cure and use it in current medical establishments, people are going to have to take a loss.
Well, you know, it really is. I have a brother who's, in fact, has serious brain cancer, and it's gotten worse with the treatment with radiation, chemotherapy. In fact, they informed him about a year ago, he's holding on his own, that the family, too, you know, that the chemo was in fact, because it was so painful, it was the last link he had if he wanted to hold on. And he decided, well, keep the chemo going. He did not want a radical treatment because I mentioned radiation, and because I've been learning from Paula and down the rabbit hole. But you know, he's holding out. He's holding out, but he's holding out in such pain. And now all of these body organs, he has all kinds of issues. Just go to naming them. He has them as a result of the radiation and the chemo.
Like kidneys trouble?
Not kidney yet, but he has had some kind of stomach ulcers and the cancer.
Has it metastasized,
yeah.
I think?
Yeah, it metastasized a long time ago, yeah. When they discovered it, it was already at that stage.
But meanwhile, I wanted to get back to one of the points about whether marijuana is actually harmful. And we were saying tobacco is harmful, alcohol is harmful. But I would say, number one, that despite the demonization of marijuana for the last 40 years, they haven't really been able to nail on marijuana much bad. You know, they can't really point to diseases that marijuana has caused by such a large number of people smoking it. They can't even talk to the kind of problems that happen with, like, alcohol, where people get violent and crazy and do bad things. I have not seen in the news anything bad to come of people smoking marijuana. The closest I've had is there was a train accident in which the driver of the train had been using alcohol and marijuana, and he had an accident. But I mean, over the last 40 years...
High, huh? Yeah, it's truly high. Well, you know, there has been an association of marijuana with youth and crimes. You know, so the criminalizing of our youth.
But the crime itself is
drugs,
the marijuana.
But when we really look at it, there's less marijuana than it is the hard drug.
Right.
You know, and that's also another drug that's chemically made. So we have to begin to look at this whole discussion. And I always, when I think of issues like marijuana, I've been looking at it. I may not. I'm not like Bill Clinton. I didn't even have a little bit. But I have been looking at it. Seems to me all of my adult lifetime at the issue of marijuana in the 60s.
People around you were using it.
Yeah, and actually my neighbors down the street when I was growing up in Mississippi, it always had this beautiful poppy garden.
Uh-huh.
They were two old women, old man and old woman. They were both in their early 90s, and it was rated. And my daddy called and said, you know, they have gone in the Ward's yard and they have killed all the flowers. You know, because it was so pretty. I mean, it's a really pretty plant.
Yeah.
And we grew up with it. Nobody, you know, we didn't go down and chew on the poppy. Even know that we should have chewed on the poppy. But we did chew on that little plant that looks like a banana peel. You know, we would get a kick out of that. Kids didn't chew on it. We called ourselves smoking it. But the thing that I'm saying is that Daddy's thing was, he said the whole neighborhood's going to be high because they didn't, he called them drug. The whole neighborhood's going to be drug. They're burning the stuff. So they actually raided, destroyed these pretty flower plants. And those old people didn't live another couple of years after that.
Oh.
They obviously were using it for medical treatment or just for their own pleasure, and it was always there.
I'm not too clear now. Were you saying both pot and poppies or just poppies?
No, they just had poppies to our knowledge.
Say, Colia, we've got Christian on the line. Can he make some comments about your brother based on what his observations were?
Yeah, make some comments not only about my...
Because he's seen so much doing this documentary.
Yeah, please, Christian. And Christian, I want you to talk about the documentary, too. But the fact that I have this brother in Mississippi who has brain cancer, it's 3 years deep now, it's metastasized. He was told he didn't have but a few months to live, and of course his sheer will to live has brought him thus far. We might say in Mississippi, in the Christian tradition, he's come this far by faith. But talk somewhat about other patients that you have seen with cancers as serious as brain cancer across the years, through your documentary, the history of this documentary, and their reaction to their resistance to the use of a drug because it has been criminalized by the government.
Let me change the tapes, Christian, before you do that. Hang on.
Sure.
Well, while she's changing the tape, you know, it's really like your voice. Thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Rolling.
Yeah, so Christian, can you comment on patients that you have seen, individuals you have seen, who one resisting the use of of hemp as a cancer treatment, and those who are accepting because they want to live?
Well, if you're talking about people who are skeptical.
Yes, skeptical.
Okay. Well, to tell you the truth, just to start this conversation, I was extremely skeptical when I met Rick Simpson. I didn't believe that there was a cure for cancer. I didn't believe it was even in existence. You never hear about stuff like that. You hear, the cancer societies want your money. They're at the door again. They got their hand out. Mm-hmm. But you don't think that they've come up with anything, of course. You would hear about that. You would think, anyway. So I decided to go and speak with Rick. Rick decided to give me some hemp oil. I said, you can talk about it all day until you're blue in the face, and I'm still not going to believe you. You need to show me something. Now, I have a condition myself called scoliosis, and it's a curvature of my spine. It's mild, but it causes, it used to cause intense pain. I couldn't even escape it, sometimes to the point I couldn't work. In fact, on government applications for schooling that I've actually taken, I have been put down as a person with a disability because of it. I can have a doctor sign that form anytime I want because of my x-ray that I had that shows that I have scoliosis. Well, Rick's hemp oil took my pain away. That was probably a 9 to a 10 out of 10 to a 0 within 5 hours. And that's why I started to believe in hemp oil. I thought, well, scoliosis is one thing, and it was the pain that it actually helped with, and it's eliminated my pain, but I still sit a little bit crooked. Now, I decided to go on the journey to meet the people that took the hemp oil for other issues. In the journey, I met people who cured skin cancer. I met somebody who had terminal, I believe it was stomach cancer. There was a lady who had a really big, ugly mole that looked like it was changing big time. Now, people always tell you if you have moles that are changing or darkening, you need to be concerned about. So she put some hemp oil on that, and the mole fell off. So here I am listening to these people, and I'm asking them, is it possible that you had some kind of I don't know what you want to call it, a spontaneous recovery, or did something else happen that may have cured your cancer? Like, how do you know it was hemp oil? And basically, the answer was the doctors could not get rid of this cancer. They decided to go with the treatment. They went back for tests. I mean, when you have skin cancer, you can pretty much confirm for yourself that it's gone. But the internal cancers, people go back to their doctors, which is like totally against Rick's advice, to get scans to find out if they still have the cancer. And it's coming out in news now that those kind of scans are very invasive and do cause mutations and cancer cells to grow. So just the very act of finding out whether you have cancer could be giving you cancer. But basically what we've seen, what Rick, I should say, has seen with patients is that people who take the oil for their cancer they have to start out very small, because the hemp oil will make you very, very drowsy if you take too much at first. It's something you basically have to acclimate yourself to. After a couple of weeks, probably, you can get yourself up to the gram-a-day dosage that Rick recommends. What happens then is the body is just overloaded with these medicinal properties of the plant. They're called cannabinoids. THC is one of them, but there's actually about 60 or more chemical compounds on that plant. There's cannabidiol, one that has been known to stop aggressive breast cancers, which has been researched by universities out of California for years and years. These things aren't being introduced into mainstream medicine yet. In fact, a lot of the people that are doing these studies are getting funded by organizations that don't really want marijuana to take the limelight, so they're going to try to mix all this in with chemotherapy and other types of treatment. Now, I did hear of a man who had, I'd like to say it was a type of internal body cancer. I can't recall exactly what it was. He had a very negative attitude toward hemp oil. He said, this isn't going to work, this is a fraud. But he took it anyway, because Rick Simpson always gave his hemp oil away for free. The only times people actually paid for hemp oil is when Rick didn't have material growing in the backyard. And of course, you have to pay grower prices for that kind of material. It takes about a pound of dry hemp to make hemp oil. So this man with the negative attitude took the hemp oil, and he came back to Rick's house probably 2 or 3 months later, completely cancer-free. He had nothing but apologies for Rick. And Rick called me up right away and told me, if this man is a good indication that if you don't have a positive attitude while you're taking the hemp oil, it doesn't matter. The cancer is going to be killed by the hemp oil. Apparently, it's very. What the marijuana does is it attacks the cancer specifically and leaves the other cells alone. So if you have skin cancer, for instance, you put the hemp oil on it. And I've seen similar things to cancer being melted by this stuff. It's just wondrous to watch it happen, because what it appears to be, when the cells are being wiped away, it's almost as if you're wiping jam from your face with a napkin. It comes off that easily. It's almost as if it just detaches all the cells from your body, and they are, I assume they're flushed out through waste if they're internal, and external cancers are wiped off as if you're wiping mud off your body. It's absolutely unbelievable. I actually use the hemp oil tincture that Rick recommends for topical applications. You mix hemp oil with quite thick with a little bit of, we use isopropyl alcohol, which some people say is carcinogenic, and whether it is or it isn't, it doesn't seem to matter if you're using it with hemp oil. The hemp oil is putting or rather the tincture, I should say. It allows the hemp oil externally to go into all the creases and crevices of the skin, all the natural lines. So if you have cancer or some other abnormal cells on your body, you can put the tincture on this, and probably within, I'd say, 5 to 10 days, you start seeing a change. With my mother, she had what you call, I believe the medical term is called seborrheic keratosis. I don't know if any of you know what that is.
No, tell us about it. What does it? How does it appear? Symptomatically?
Well, it manifests itself on the skin. It's some people call it age spots or liver spots.
Oh.
They're quite large. Elderly people tend to get them on their face. You see these bumps that look like almost like a wart or something that just looks like like a bulged out mole or something.
Isn't that sun damage?
It can be, yes. I've heard that these are caused by sun. They're also caused by toxins in the body that rise to the skin.
No, I get them on my neck. I mean, you know.
Well, hemp oil will remove those, but it won't remove anything else. It will cause new skin to grow underneath, and the thing itself will fall off. It's just incredible. The first time I saw it, I have to admit, I was moved to tears.
Well, I want you to go over that again because, you know, when we go to talking about this great testimony, and you come up with something especially for women who get spots on their skin, who get little balls as I get on my neck, and we want to get rid of them. And you're telling me, Christian, that there's a possibility that the hemp oil, in fact, you're saying not a possibility, you're talking about testimony, that the hemp oil actually removes these. Are you listening, New York?
I have pulled these off of my mother. I have pulled probably 10 of them off of her back. One of them actually came off completely at once. That's the first time I had ever seen any kind of blemish from the other side of the skin. It was actually on the sticky side of the bandage, which we had used to apply the oil. Basically what you do is you put the tincture on this, I'll call it a growth. It sits there, it dries, it becomes tacky, it starts to attack those bad cells. It creates new skin underneath the bad cells and allows the bad cells to come off. I can't explain.
Well, hold on, Rick, hold on a minute. Just think of the money women can save in beauty products and in those little prescriptions that we get to go get this and that doesn't work. However, the vitamin E hasn't been so bad for me. It removes some of it. But just think of the money women can save. We need to, Rick, how do we get this information? Let's talk a bit about the documentary and how we are going to get. I know with Paula Gloria tonight and being down here in this rabbit hole, we begin the process. But how do we get this information out to the world where we begin to talk about not just the cancers, but the other conditions that the hemp oil can be used to treat? Because maybe it's through the other conditions that we can begin to get the message about the cancer piece out.
Well, I've actually used hemp oil myself for asthma. Ooh. And I don't have asthma anymore.
Whoa.
So I'm not only pain-free from the scoliosis, and I can jump and dance and run and play, by the way.
Hemp oil treat me for go and talk. Treatment for asthma?
Well, what I'd like to know is where exactly can we get, if it's illegal, how can we get it?
Well,
hemp oil, that is.
That's the hard
I suppose you'd have to take your chances and decide whether it's something you're going to want to do or not. I believe people should be able to make choices. I believe as humans we should have the choice to do and choose what medical treatments we're going to have.
Well, hold on, just 1 minute, Rick, because we got a guest. We got a guest in our audience. Will you tell us who you are?
He's got to come up to you to get mic'd.
Please, yes.
Hi, I'm Frank Craven, and I have a public access show, What's Ailing Healing America. You can buy hemp oil, actually, in the health food stores as omega-3 and omega-6. It doesn't have the THC in it, but hey, you know, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington were well-known hemp farmers.
Hey, let's Christian answer
You
that
said
about
that
the
too.
THC. if you need that, because of what you said, getting cancer off like jelly from your face.
Christian, do you hear us?
Yes.
Did you hear that?
I'm glad that you mentioned about the hemp oil that is sold in health food stores. That is actually very correct. It does not contain THC. It doesn't contain any cannabinoids whatsoever, which is the medicine that you need to cure cancer and these other illnesses that people are being cured from who are using it. Hemp oil that is sold in stores is actually mislabeled. It is actually pressed hemp seed oil. Now, the seeds have a very trace amount of cannabinoids, not nearly enough to destroy the cancer cells or the other mutating cells that are causing these underlying conditions.
Let me try answering, Chris. On YouTube, there is, you can Google Rick Simpson, and there are a variety of conversations he's had. You can also Google video the Run from the Cures that Christian produced. And I think on the internet, there are, for example, conversations Rick has with people on how to make your own. So he walks you through the process, and that's basically what we have at this moment in our history. We have to do it ourselves.
Well, you know, and you know, while we talk about how to do things against government-created anti-human laws, we also reason why I mentioned the beauty stuff, because we need to begin to talk about if indeed we can get testimony, provable testimony, that hemp is removing the stuff from blemishes from our skin. And I'm just using that as an example. Then it seems to me that women in the United States, and I'm just using women since we are usually the group that radicalizes the world along with young folk, and since young folk will go to jail, maybe women ought to do it.
And they do care about beauty.
We begin to talk about building a movement, one bringing in folk with the testimony. Some of us going to wherever these people are and actually, you know, we're having access to them, visiting Rick and his program, talking about accessibility to Rick. That's one. Other than on the YouTube and other ways we can get him through the technology, but actually going and visiting and meeting with some of the clients and talking with these living witnesses, you know, like religion.
Well, I'd like to mention that speaking of religion and testimony in the Bible, Genesis verse 29, it says, all green seed bearing food is food. And obviously hemp is food, and it is natural in God's law. So whatever the white man says doesn't matter. Weed is legal. And if you are arrested or busted, just demand a trial by jury, because you'll be juried by your peers. And they give these psychotropic drugs that drive us crazy and are really pharmaceutical, artificial. But the natural weed is something I'm sure we won't get in trouble for using, because it's very healthy. And I've known many people that have killed themselves with Alzheimer's and various other problems because of this natural weed that's age-old and worldwide, and it's ridiculous to consider it illegal. No weed is illegal in God's law.
Well, if you get in trouble,
I want to testify. We got some testimony coming up in here. New York, we're here. Paula Gloria is editing tonight, and I'm Colia Clark, and we're here doing Further Down the Rabbit Hole. We have Christian, who has produced a wonderful documentary on hemp. He's also shown us what happens in the rest of the world outside of America. It doesn't happen here. We don't have illegal police raids here. They show us their warrants, and you know, when the police come, they're real nice, and they said, "Lady, I'm Officer so and so, and here's my card." You know, they show you.
You're kidding, right?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I'm not kidding. Then they shoot you.
Yeah.
Christian, I had another question. In Canada, what is the size of the movement in favor of Rick? Has there been some progress in creating a movement in favor of Rick?
I actually get emails all the time from people all over Canada, all over the world actually, asking how they can help Rick. I've gotten several thousand emails from people who want to get involved directly. Usually I point them to the websites, I point them to the literature, I point them to the studies that have been done. Of course, the videos that we've made. Run from the Cure actually does demonstrate how to circumvent the law and make your own hemp oil, which we had a little bit of reservation doing, but we put a disclaimer up and said don't do it, and we figured that everybody that wants to behave won't do that. Get right.
Well, there's a piece of legislation here coming up in the Congress, right?
Well, as
With
I
medical
understand
marijuana.
California is going the next step. That California is actually considering a vote on legalizing marijuana for everybody, not just medical marijuana.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's talk about both. Because, Christian, we got Obama in office, and he has confessed. Unlike Clinton, he didn't tell that lie. He confessed to having dealt with drugs. And so under his administration, it seems that we have gotten now into the Congress a bill around the whole medical marijuana piece that possibly will come up, and maybe we'll see some movement on it. And now we are hearing from Joe about California going the extra step and saying, well, what we should be saying from the start, and that is if marijuana has some positive attributes, then we should be talking about marijuana for everybody as opposed to marijuana for the few.
In fact, I would even go further in terms of the dynamics of why people are against it versus for it. I think a big part of the pressure against marijuana is the general idea that marijuana helps you think outside of the box, and people have successfully been manipulated into a box, and marijuana is the liberation of people out of the box. And there is the bad guys who control us don't want us to see the truth for what it is.
I want to see if I can get some testimony from Rick on this too. Because what I've been told is not only just, I keep saying Rick, you're here. Kristen, you brought Rick.
Yeah.
But I have been told time and time and time again by potheads, which is how we refer to people in the USA, Rick, who smoke marijuana.
Christian.
No, Rick again. Now, Rick is here. I brought Rick to the house.
Oh, Rick is here?
Oh. The testimony is here. He's here. He's in the room.
channeled.
He's in the house. So, Christian, that if you want to delve into yourself psychologically, or even into dreams, that the use of marijuana is one of the products that one can use for that. And that's so that the whole idea of the priest, the chiefs, was that you smoke the stuff, and then you could look into other folks' lives, into dreams and whatever, and begin to talk about it. So that thinking outside of the box piece is a piece that at some point, certainly not tonight, but I would like to comment. Have you heard that, Christian? People talk about the clear mind.
Yes. I've definitely heard of marijuana being called a mind-expanding drug. I've also been, unfortunately, a lot of the things that I've heard about this mind-expanding is negative. There's a negative spin put on it by the U.S. government. Old propaganda ads that you can still find on the Internet, they say mind-expanding, it's more addictive than cigarettes and alcohol. Well, when you use hemp oil, I don't know if you get the mind-expanding effect when you do that. You might, I suppose, if you weren't so drowsy.
Excuse me. Sure, something that's going to expand your mind is going to be addictive. You're addicted to having your mind expanded. And of course they hate that because the powers that be, because as Joe said, you think outside the box and you think, you know what, I don't have to do what they're telling me. This is bullshit. They are lying. If I don't do this, I'm still alive. Nothing bad happened. They told me something bad would happen. Nothing bad happened. They are full of crap. The emperor's new clothes. They don't want you to see that. I am so cynical. Makes me want to have a hit.
One extra point I wanted to make, Holly and Christian, is that I've been to conferences where they recite the official scientific description of the marijuana effect, and they say it enhances synaptic connections. that kind of language is basically amounts to it helps your nervous system work better.
Exactly.
Whoa, this rabbit hole is getting hotter. Because as we get further and further into this discussion, we get into the folklore, we get into the everyday lives of people as they live it.
Say, you guys, we got to wrap up. Christian, we're going to have another public access fest here on the 21st. So we're hoping that you can join us for many hours, and maybe some of our esteemed producers. Diana, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
And Joe, of course, as always, thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
And Colia, if you want to make a few concluding
Yeah, well, I
words.
just want to conclude that we really do need to look at rush from the cure. And we need to not only look at rush from the cure, but look
Run
at it
from the cure.
seriously.
Run.
Run from the cure, excuse me. Run. You don't want to rush, you want to run. We want to look at the work that's being done in Canada, and we also need to begin right now this evening. Get out our papers and pen and write down the website, because it's going to be shown here on the screen, because after all, there's a man in Canada by the side of the road with a 1,500-acre farm who needs our assistance with his case, not just to help the world community in terms of curing cancer and other ailments that affect our bodies and our minds, but also in struggling against a powerful police establishment that has been said clearly to be a worldwide police establishment. So get your pencil and paper out. Further down the rabbit hole, Paula Gloria will be back next week. Thank you for sharing with us this evening. And again, we thank both our guests.
Thank you.
And we thank Christian.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Christian.
And we thank you for bringing Rick, Christian.
Thank you.
Glad to be
Rick.
part of it.
Thanks to Rick.
Thank you, and we'll